Chapter 12, May, 1930. West End Theatre, shortly after the visit from Lord Grantham. "Have you heard from her?" Guy Dexter watched his lover nod his head. "She is in Germany, working in Leipzig, the place to be for nuclear physics." He gave Dexter a wry smile. "She has put through for a divorce. They're all the rage." "So I hear," Noel told Barrow. "Even Lady Mary's getting one." "But he has treated her appallingly," Guy told Thomas, taking Barrow's hand. "You never treated me, Lucina, badly." "I have a broken bar. There has been time as a broken bar." Thomas Barrow broke off. "Anyway, if she does it, it will be legal in Germany." "And she wants to marry a German?" "A German physicist no less," Thomas replied, "who has done something very clever with mathematics." "A genius." Barrow shook his head. "But, Milo should know by now, fixing one thing doesn't necessarily make the second thing happen." "He is a very competitive man." "And a German," Guy prompted. "Indeed. They feel about the British how we feel about them after the last war." "He may not wish to marry her." They fell to silence as Noel slipped out through the dressing room door. Dexter reached out and turned the key in the lock. "And what will she do if it fails?" "Return." "Probably," Thomas told his lover, as Guy placed a hand on his shoulder. "But Freddie Bonner says her assets are mine, legally, whether she gets the divorce or not." "That makes you a very wealthy man, Guy Dexter told him, his hand working its way down Thomas Barrow's left arm. "Marconi is gaining steadily in both the US and Commonwealth. That little piece she invented, and patented, in every gramophone and radiogram all over the world has made you rich." Thomas knew it. "Sometimes, for her lack of worldliness or sense of other people, me Lucina Ashby, me Lucina Barrow, knew things far beyond their time." She had given to Thomas her work developed from her brother's work, a legacy directly to him from Ernest. If she returned, it would rather put a crimp on Thomas's life. He knew he could not abandon her to the cottage or the electronics business at Downton, not that there was much there any longer. Perhaps she would return to Cambridge and into Rutherford's care. But the thing was, this plan for her personal life was the first time Lucina had thought of anything more than Milo's work in physics. They had married so that she could go to Manchester and graduate, and then she had the scope to work as a postgraduate in Cambridge. What she was doing in Leipzig was a mystery to Thomas and, should this divorce plan come off, perhaps even a mystery to Milo. Further thoughts of his wife were pushed on the shore of his consciousness as the ship of passion was dashed on the rocks. He kissed Guy full on the lips, running his hands down his back, and began to slip off his lover's suit jacket until there was nothing but a whisper of air between their naked bodies. 88,888,888. "At least until tomorrow, when he'll have retired," Mrs. Batemore told Thomas Barrow, a month later. He was back, in the servants' rooms, the kitchens. How he thought he would never be in Downton Abbey again and feel happy. "All changed then, Daisy?" Thomas asked her, after Noel Coward's performance. "You, in charge of the house. Are you surprised?" "No," Thomas told her, choosing to take her words at face value, rather than defensiveness. "You have worked here so long, and Mrs. Batemore has taught you everything you know. Except for the things you have taught yourself. And then there's Andy Butler." Daisy nodded, this time revealing her happiness in an enormous smile. "Oh, Thomas, I am so happy." He took her shoulders for a moment, and smiled back to her. "And I'm happy for you." "And I'm happy for you." She glanced past Thomas and into the hallway, where Guy Dexter was chatting to Noel Coward. "Coordinating all them films for Mr. Dexter." "And a broken bar here, a broken bar." Daisy broke off, and they exchanged a look. "She's in Leipzig, still working on her physics," Thomas said at last. "I knew," Daisy replied. "She listed all the people she's worked with." "She's doing well." Daisy shifted her feet, then sighed. "And she sent me this." From her apron she took a piece of paper, which had been folded and unfolded several times, the edge creases worn. "She broken bar sent these a broken bar, yeah broken bar." Daisy held the paper out to Thomas. "Yeah broken bar, thought you ought to know about it, 'cause I don't have any idea what it means. But, she sent it to me. And, well, you knew, Milo don't do anything by accident. And a broken bar, I didn't know how to get it to you, or if I'd see yer, Thomas, beaut a broken bar, well, a broken bar yer here now, and, she took Thomas's hand and put the paper into it. What do it mean? She asked, eyeing the paper and Thomas's face, as he unfolded it, scanning its contents. A formula, perhaps a broken bar, or share numbers. A broken bar? Look, Thomas pointed at the repeated groups of numbers, or even coordinates. He raised his eyebrows, and then looked at Daisy noncommittally. Perhaps her friend Chadwick would know it's a physics thing, no doubt. But there'll be a reason you're the recipient, Daisy, Thomas told her with a finality that made it clear he had nothing more to say on the matter. Me Lucina does not do things by accident, even if we cannot see the purpose yet. 88,888,888. November 1973. It was raining, and the V8 engine of the rover was putting in the power as Sir James Chadwick made the journey up the new road, North Motorways, Britain's answer to America's freeways. They were designed to make traffic congestion better, but had resulted in a freedom of travel that had caused people making the same decision to travel on them and congestion building. Had Turing still been alive, Blackett's colleague, he would, Chadwick was sure, been able to understand the mathematics that caused it, and, perhaps, offer a solution. After all, he had given his time and effort in the service of his country on 2 separate occasions. Yet, for neither had he been recognized. Perhaps, then, congestion was what the country deserved. He had a stinking cold, and the vertical downpour was not making him feel any better. Had this been for anyone other than Milo, Chadwick would not have left his warm fireplace. But it was, and here he was, with George Paget Thompson beside him. The man who had devised the Maud project and overseen the handover of the atomic project to the Americans in 1942, when they neither wanted it, nor recognized its potential, was sleeping in the seat beside him. The paper was in his pocket, kept safe beside his wallet. Thomas had been right. Lucina was with them all, almost 30 years after she had died. There was so much that was still secret, and he supposed this was one of those secrets too. Yet, George P.T. had worked in intelligence and would know exactly what could or couldn't be said. This was for Milo, the brilliant woman who had never left them, even in death, who had anticipated moves far ahead of her time, because she knew what she wanted to achieve. Who said she didn't know people or how they behaved. He had been there, in the summer. One could pretend it had been an outing. 2 trains in the glorious summer sunshine. Fewer football fans about, though there had been more interest because Scotland had qualified as well as England, who had been riding high after 1966 against Germany. Well, half of Germany. Do you think it qualifies as slander, as Miss Barrow believes? Under his hat, George Paget opened an eye. He saw Chadwick shiver and felt sympathy for his colleague and friend. I could have driven. If she publishes what she has, and Lady Hexam allows it, she could be sued. By whom, I am not certain, but it would cause even more tension in the north of Ireland than is already happening. Beaut a broken bar on the face of it. The man is as loathsome as his father, worse even. He has more connections, more power, and Lucina can no longer fight back. She has us, George Paget told Chadwick, and her granddaughter, and Thomas Barrow. And the girl may even be right to publish it all. It's her family after all, her father who is missing. Call the bully's bluff, that's what I say. There was silence for a time, as the rain decided to ease off on its persistent thudding onto the bonnet and roof of Britain's finest motoring, and instead replace the precipitation with an incessant deluge. If this is true, if what Miss Barrow claims, there could be huge repercussions for the family. The Crawley family. There aren't many left, but they have influence. And her revelations could cause an international ruckus. Now, my dear Chadwick, George Paget chuckled, you're speaking like a newspaper editor yourself now. Repercussions, revelations, ruckus. He watched as James Chadwick pulled the lever for the windscreen wipers, which did little more than sweep away the water, clearing a path for more to take its place without actually improving the visibility. In the distance, red tail lights flashed. Slow-moving traffic. They could have caught the train and it would have been far more comfortable. "Do you have what Beth sent you?" George Pegott asked after Chadwick had negotiated the traffic. Peterborough. About halfway there, he watched as Chadwick nodded. So, it was true, then. Barrow will just have to accept it. But, at least when Ernest is found he will be in line for it all. If Miss Barrow has the legal writ. Otherwise, it is just me Lucina's handwriting of some vague figures and facts. It was true. Nothing could be proven without the other part of the document. English and General Electric, who now owned Marconi's, had claimed nothing even existed, and George Pegott Thompson should leave by the same way he had come and just as quickly, until MI6 intervened. And then they were only marginally more cooperative. And, Thompson thought to himself, Chadwick, witness to the marriage, would just have to accept it, too. The threads went deepest of all, with Chadwick. "He calls himself Brendan O'Brien," George Pegott told his friend, but then closed his eyes again as Chadwick concentrated on the road. Milo had touched them all, none more so than Sir James. 88,888,888. August, 1970. "I must always dress on my own," the notebook said. A note written in curled writing up the side of the margin. 18th of May, 1921. Thomas put it to one side and rubbed his eyes with the knuckle of his little finger. Milo, her very soul was in the pages. It should have gone with Pegott Thompson, when he collected her things, the night after she died. But Thomas loved her for being her. He couldn't let it all go. And he thought he'd lost it not so long ago. But it was there, where it had always should have been, in the Ashby cottage. He'd found it in the workshop with Harold Ashby's old ledgers of jobs he had done. Ernest had kept them. Young Ernest had too. Janet should read them. It was right she read her grandmother's things. But not yet, thought Thomas Barrow, selfishly. He wasn't prepared to share his Milo with anyone, not her mathematics, or her radio work, all of which, barely legible from age, was written here. All her work she had done at Downton, even her work she had sold to the Marconi family, of which she was one. Other things, too, a page with a kind of drawing done in black ink, of a box with lines coming out. And, on several pages, numbers, in pairs, like grid references. Would Laurie have known? No. Thomas reprimanded himself, sharply. Laurie Bragg had gone from him, back to Manchester. Yes, but he would have someone else tell him one day. For now, Milo was preserved in paper and graphite, ink and the occasional blot, his last link to her brother. A knock came to the door, followed by Flora bustling in. She blinked towards the semi-darkness, her mind registering her father-in-law. "Thomas!" she exclaimed. "I didn't expect a broken bar. I just came to put the heating on ready for when Ernest got back." Flora examined Thomas's face, recognizing the depth of feeling that any reminder of me Lucina brought to him. "Can I get you a cup of tea?" "No, not just now, Flory dear," he told Daisy's daughter. "But, come to the cottage this evening, once Ernest has returned. Bring Janet, too. I may have something for her." He watched Flora leave the sitting room and go into the back room, the kitchen. The water tap went on, and she let it run for a minute, before filling the kettle with it and lighting the gas hob with a match. 3 minutes and tea was on the boil. Ernest's train was due in at around 4, and he would walk the mile up the hill to Downton and the old chauffeur's cottage. When she appeared back in the sitting room with a teapot and, yes, 2 cups, with milk and sugar on the tray, Thomas acquiesced to tea and listened as Flory approved Janet's departure. "She's making some progress on Milo's life," she told Thomas. "Are you prepared for what she might find in Germany?" "Is Ernest?" Thomas asked. "He's Ernest's father, after all, and is a prolific physicist even now." "Ernest spoke to me about your conversation," Flory told Thomas. "That one day, sooner or later, the subject of his birth would come about." She sipped her tea. "I hope it will satisfy Janet's curiosity." But, of course, Lady Edith would never sanction such things in her magazine. Too niche, too personal. Too few readers would be interested. And the you are, Flory Parker, Thomas thought to himself. Already, you decided the future, and distilled the reason. By diminishing it, you have already made it far less important than it was. making everyone feel good by bringing down the tension, the heightened drama. Just like you. No wonder Ernest loves you. Headstrong was the word. Agreed, Thomas told her. Janet can read all I have, but she must show me what she intends to publish. Milo is no longer here to defend herself before she goes up to Oxford for Lady Edith. And, had it just been the history of the Barrow Ashby family, it might well just have been a young journalist's side project. Patrick Neil Branson, Lord of Inchiquin, displaced, sat in a pub in Manchester, nursing the only alcohol he could afford and listening to the rantings of a socialist on the unfairness that the new Tory government was having on the people of the country, its higher taxation, and a deregulation of the school system that's going to drive it. He was screaming to his neighbor over the volume of the radio. Horse racing was on, and even he wasn't about to miss the derby for the rantings of a left-winger, even if the horse race was for the English upper class, of which his father had married into. And even if he did agree with the socialist, can you just shut up for a minute? The horses were coming in, plenty of Irish interest. Patrick Neil had been happy to know many of the trainers. Downton Abbey was one railway station away. He could afford another pint and hear of the racing. But, a broadcast interrupted the end of the derby, which described the violence on the streets of Londonderry as the British Army sought to suppress yet another uprising from Catholic and national factions who were asking for nothing more than voting rights equal to that of their Protestant neighbours, fair housing allocation and police reform. Well, if he hadn't been about to do it anyway, Patrick Neil reflected, then the news might have garnered him to action. As it was, he had the news story already written. The National Trust inquiry that had so angered Thomas Barrow has come from him. Now, he was ready to take one step more. All he had to do was to hand it in at the post office for submission in the letters section of the weekly, local newspaper, the Downton Gazette, and the first blow would be struck.